Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining the webinar today. We're just going to give it a minute or two to give people a chance to join, and then we'll get started. But in the meantime, our host today, Vicky, has a question for you, which would be helpful if you could all answer in the chat.
Hi everyone. So before we get going properly, I would love to know where you're at with your current planning for your Big Give campaign during Small Charity Week. So are you like not planned at all and feeling really lost? Like, are you partly planned but not really sure what's next? Are you in the middle of planning, or do you feel like you're basically ready to launch? It'd be really great just to see where you are. So answer that question in the chat when you're ready. Great. So we've got someone already answering saying they haven't started yet, but they have an idea in their head, which is always great. And we've got a few just starting, ready to put it in action. Fantastic.
Great. I think we've given a minute to. We'll get started, but before I get started with the housekeeping, I'll ask Vicky to ask that question again for people that have just joined.
So we're just asking how you're getting along with your planning. Are you just starting, but you don't feel ready at all? Like, are you in the middle of your planning? Do you feel ready to launch? Like, it'd be just fantastic to know where you are in your journey for planning for this Big Give appeal during Small Charity Week.
Great. Thank you, Vicky. Thank you all for joining us today. This is the planning webinar for the Small Charity Week campaign, which Big Give, Global Make Some Noise, and NCVO are jointly running. So I'm Saho, I'm the Key Partnerships Manager at Big Give. And on this webinar today, we also have Bethany, our Marketing Comms Manager, and we have Vicky from NCVO, who will be delivering the webinar. So we're really grateful for Vicky for sharing her time with us and her expertise. Before we begin, just want to go over some housekeeping. So there is a chat box at the bottom of your Zoom panel. If you open that up, it'll show up on the right-hand side. When you are using that, please make sure you set the chat reply to everyone so everyone can see what you're saying. It's a great place to introduce yourselves to other attendees and to us. You can also use the chat to share ideas and thoughts during any interactive exercise that we may have. Also, if you have any tech issues, please put them in the chat as well, and we'll get to them as soon as possible. For any questions for the Q&A portion of the webinar, please use the Q&A box at the bottom of your Zoom panel, and that's where we'll be able to pick up the questions. Try to avoid using the chat to post any questions, just because sometimes they can get lost in there. There is a transcription service available. So at the bottom of your Zoom panel, if you click on the three dots, you should be able to turn that on if you do need closed captioning. And a reminder that this webinar is being recorded. We will be posting it to our YouTube channel after the session, so you can rewatch it and share it with colleagues if you want to do so. And if you have any questions after the session, there is the support hub on the Big Give website for any questions you may have. And if you can't find any answers there, you can contact us at hello@biggive.org, and we'll be happy to answer any questions you may have. But with the housekeeping all said and done, I am going to hand over to Vicky now to get us kicked off.
Great. Thank you so much. Let me just share my screen with you. Okay. Now, can you see the presentation?
Yes.
Lovely. Thank you so much. All right, make sure I've got my notes up. So just to begin with, oh, hold on, I'm just going to move one of the screens around. So just to begin with, my name is Vicky Ward, and I am currently working at NCVO as our Partnerships and Fundraising Manager, but I have more than 15 years experience in fundraising. I've been the head of fundraising at the British Youth Council and at Wellbeing of Women, and I'm a former participant in the Big Give campaign. So I've raised over £50,000 for both these charities using the Big Give as a tool. So I have been where you are, I have worked at small charities, and I just want you to know that all of my advice comes from a place of knowledge and things that I have actually tried. So before we properly get into it, I do have a little disclaimer that unfortunately, I don't have a magic wand. I wish that I did, and I wish I could make all of your appeals be absolutely perfect. But even miracles take a little bit of time. But what I do have is tried and tested knowledge that I hope to share with you today that will help you get to a place where you feel really confident with your appeals and that you are really successful during your Big Give appeal during Small Charities Week. So what we're planning to cover today is how to set your fundraising objectives for your fundraising campaign, setting up your campaign timeline, building some campaign assets, donor-centered communication, mapping your network, donor love, and a Q&A session. I have made sure we've got lots of time for Q&A at the end because I'm sure you're going to have loads of questions. So my hope is that you will leave the session with clear ideas that you can use specifically for this campaign to help you reach your goals. So first off, how to set objectives for your fundraising campaign. It's really important to start off with SMART goals. So specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound to give your campaign structure and focus. When setting objectives for your fundraising campaign, it's really easy to focus only on how much money you want to raise, but that's just one piece of the puzzle. A successful campaign might also mean growing your audience. You can use this opportunity to gain more email subscribers or social media followers. These new contacts could become long-term supporters. You might want to think about engagement as well. How many people are interacting with your content? Are they sharing or commenting or clicking through to learn more? These actions all indicate growing interest and awareness. So consider using the campaign as a platform to build relationships with businesses or other organizations aligned with your cause, because this could lead to future partnerships or sponsorships. Campaigns are also a great chance to reconnect with past supporters. I've called them lap supporters. I just want to make sure that everybody knows that means past supporters, because we're going to get onto later talking in internal words and with internal acronyms and that sort of thing. So I just want to make sure I'm talking about past supporters. Campaigns are a great chance to reconnect with them. Someone who gave 3 years ago might just need a reason to return, and match funding can be that reason. As you test different messages and approaches, you're also strengthening your storytelling. What's working? What resonates most with your audience? Ultimately, think about what success looks like for your charity. It might be about reach, re-engagement, new leads, or visibility, as much as it's about pounds raised. So we're going to now talk about setting your campaign timeline. So a clear timeline is one of the most important parts of campaign planning, especially for time-limited initiatives like Small Charity Week. Start by working backwards from the official campaign dates. What needs to be ready a week before, or 2 weeks before, or a month before, etc. This helps you see how much prep time you need, and then you can break your campaign into clear stages. So think about the pre-launch, when you want to build excitement, the launch itself, a mid-campaign boost to maintain momentum, a final 48-hour push, and then your post-campaign follow-up. If you plot your communications for each stage, then you'll know when you need to send emails, when you want to post on social media, and you'll have moments in your calendar when you might call key donors. It's easier to stay consistent when the plan is set in advance. If you bring your internal team in early and make sure you brief everyone and make sure that roles are clear so that nothing is missed during the busy campaign window, it could be helpful for you to have a joint to-do list using tools like Trello to keep track of who is doing what and when. I would also advise leaving some flexibility. So if something's working really well, you might want to double down on it. And if something's falling flat, adjust quickly. A top tip I have for this is having a 10-minute sort of stand-up meeting every morning during the campaign with key members of your team or key volunteers, depending on the size of your organisation, to make sure that things are raised and addressed quickly. And then finally, plan for after your campaign too. You want to plan for thanking your donors promptly, showing them the difference they made, and keeping the relationship going. But there will be more on this later. So we're going to talk about some campaign assets, but just quickly, Globals Make Some Noise are running the next webinar on marketing and storytelling, where they will be giving lots more in-depth advice. So this webinar is on Wednesday this week, which is the 14th. And there will also be an Ask Us Anything Q&A on Friday this week. But until then, here are some of my top tips for building your campaign assets. So the more prepared you are before the launch, the smoother and more effective your campaign will be. So make sure your content is easy to share. Simple graphics, quotes or stats, short videos, and posts that supporters can repost with one click are really helpful. Your words matter just as much. So write some strong copy that clearly explains what you're raising funds for, why it matters, what difference the donor will make, and what difference the donor will make. You'll also want some email templates ready to go so you can easily send out launch day messages, mid-campaign updates, and thank you notes. Real stories and authentic photos of your work go a really long way in making your case, so I would advise starting to collect these now. And then finally, consider creating a mini sort of supporter toolkit that includes some sample posts and guidance for anyone who wants to help promote the campaign. It makes it a lot easier for people to take action. We're going to talk about mapping your network now. So you may have more reach than you actually might realise. Particularly if you're a small charity, you might start to think, oh, we don't have many supporters. And before you start to think, oh, Vicky, I'm sure it's easy for you. I'm sure you've always had loads of supporters. When I first started working at the British Youth Council, they had one donor, and that was it. All the rest of the funding came from the government and 2 grants. So I have been where you are, and I know that growing a supporter base can be done from very low numbers. So I would first off start with your inner circle. So staff, trustees, volunteers, past donors and partners. These are the people that are most likely to engage quickly because they already know what you do and why it's important. Then I want you to look outwards. Do you have friendly suppliers, local cafes, community leaders or schools that might share your campaign and collaborate in small ways? There is a very strange statistic in charities that dentists seem to be a very generous place to go if you're looking for corporate support. So have a look to see if there's a dentist near you that might be interested in supporting you during Small Charity Week, because, as I say, they just seem to be a very generous sector. Excuse me. So then I want you to identify your connectors. So these are people who may not be able to give the biggest gift, but they know lots of other people and can spread the word effectively. And then I want you to not forget about your digital spaces. Who's on your email list? Who's engaging on social media? Who's in your WhatsApp groups or other informal networks? It's not just about who you know, but it's about who they know as well. So empower your supporters to extend your reach. And remember, not everybody has to give money. Some people are really well placed to amplify your message, make introductions, or open doors. Now, we've had a lot of me talking, and we're only 11 minutes in. So I would like for us to do a 5-minute task where you can actually sit and start to think about who your network is. So I know that working in a small charity means that you're really time poor. So we're going to just take 5 minutes right now during this session. The goal is to help you visualize your existing network. Because often, as I say, you know more people than you realize, and you have more reach than you think. So please, can you grab a piece of paper or open a notes app or open a Word document on your computer? And I want you to start creating a spider diagram with your organization or your campaign in the middle. And then I want you to start listing the different groups or individuals that are connected to you. So I've got a couple of prompts on the screen, which are think about your internal network, your donors, partners locally to you or nationally, depending on where you are, online, so subscribers or email, or social media followers, and personal. And then I want you to start thinking about the connectors. So I'm going to give you 5 minutes now, and then we can reconvene and we'll carry on. So just to remind you, you don't have to be exhaustive, but you can jot down as many names or groups and categories as you can. The aim is to identify people who could donate, share your campaign, introduce you to others, offer in-kind help or visibility, and generally just people that will take an interest in your campaign. So do take a few more minutes to add one or two more names or groups you might have missed. And often the best ideas come right at the end. So I'm just going to give you a couple more minutes to think of some more. Okay, I'm just going to bring everybody back. So just from this short exercise, I'm hoping that you've started to build a picture of your network. And this is something that you can come back to and keep adding to as you plan your campaign. So next up, we're going to talk about donor-centered communications. So we cannot talk about good fundraising without also discussing donor-centered communication. It shifts the spotlight away from the charity and onto your donor. They should feel like they are making a real and personal difference. So a general rule of thumb is to use the word you more than you use the word we in any of your communications. So for example, instead of saying we provide support services, you could say you make support possible for people going through crisis. I always want you to highlight the specific impact of a donation. Don't just say support our program. Say what that program does in a real life context. As yourself, what change does the donor create? This is where human stories are golden. So I want you to put a name and a face to the impact. People give to people, not to programs. So keep your tone warm and authentic and avoid jargon and technical language. The goal is to connect rather than impress. And finally, remember it's about how amazing your organization is. It's not about how amazing your organization is. It's about how amazing the donor is for choosing to help. Now, I did say we were going to come back to talking about acronyms and internal language and jargon. So I have edited out where this sign is from, but I did see it at museum. And as someone who's worked in fundraising for a really long time, I have absolutely no idea what this sign is trying to say. I will read it aloud just to see if that helps anybody. So it says on the screen, we are an organisation with a social function. We focus on civic engagement and repurpose art as a tool for changing the world. Our programme is people-centred and addresses urgent issues. Our constituents, users and visitors shape our activities, and with them we foster citizenship through education, activism and community development. Now, as I say, I have no idea what they were asking of us as supporters of the museum, and I still don't know what it is that they do. So I'm using this. I don't mean to shame, and like I say, I've taken out the name, but it's just really helpful to understand why jargon, it can be so isolating for donors. So it's really important to avoid using jargon, acronyms, internal charity language in your fundraising communications. Remember, donors aren't inside your organisation, so terms like service delivery or beneficiaries might make sense to us because we live and breathe it, but it can feel cold or confusing to someone on the outside. So instead, I urge you to use plain human language that clearly explains what you do and why it matters. If you wouldn't say it in a conversation with a friend, it probably doesn't belong in your campaign messaging. I'm going to talk some more about donor-centered communication. So to make sure that your campaign communications are truly donor-centered, start by getting someone outside your organization to read it. If they don't understand it quickly, your donors won't either. So try and use simple and clear language. You're not writing a report, you're having a conversation. Keep your sentences short and direct. Short sentences are easier to digest and more persuasive. Don't forget, most donors skim emails or letters and social media posts. They do not read every word. So make sure that your key messages stand out and always include a clear, prominent call to action, like a highlighted section or a bold donate now button or link. The easier you make it for them to act and know what they're doing and what you need them to do, the more likely it is that they will. So I'm going to talk about something now called donor love, which is something I have been talking about for years, and I believe so wholeheartedly in it as a principle. Donor love is all about making people feel seen, appreciated, and part of something meaningful. It's about building relationships, not just raising funds. And here are some of my main tips for living and breathing donor love in your fundraising campaign. So I want you to start by thanking your donors quickly and personally. A heartfelt email or a handwritten note goes so much further than a generic receipt. Donors want to know when they've made a difference, so always follow up with real human impact. Show them what they achieved, not what the organisation did. Stay in touch between campaigns, so don't only show up when you need money, but share progress, success stories, or even just check in. Add a personal touch when possible. So use their name, acknowledge past support, or pick up the phone to say thank you. It really does mean so much to the donors, to your causes. And celebrate your donors. So if you get their permission, you can feature them on your social media posts or on your donor wall, or do some shout outs in your email mailings. But most importantly, you need to treat donors as partners. The goal is to have long-term, values-based relationships, not just transactional one-time gifts. One of the most effective approaches to donor communication is the ask, thank, report, repeat method. So I didn't create this infographic, I just have to say that out loud. This was created by a fundraiser called Steven Screen, who's based in the US, and I don't want to claim that I made this. So it's a simple and powerful method when it's done well, and it builds deep trust and lasting relationships with your supporters. So you start with the ask, which has to be a clear, specific, donor-centered invitation to make a difference. Then comes the thank, prompt, personal, and heartfelt, not just a receipt, but a real moment of appreciation. Next is the report. Now, this is where you tell the donor what their gift actually did. It's not about your charity, it's about them, the donor. And then you can repeat the process, but only after each step has been completed in full. So the key here is to not rush or combine steps. If you skip reporting back or you merge your thank you with another ask, which is sometimes called tasking, you can damage the trust and donors feel like they're just being used and not valued. When you honour each part of the process, donors can feel seen, appreciated, and empowered. And that's what turns one-time givers into long-term supporters. I'm going to talk about something called delighters now, which is one of my favourite things to talk about. So there's a quote on the screen that says, surprise and delight your donors with small gestures that make them happy. And this is actually a quote of myself, which is really embarrassing, but I still stand by it. So these things don't have to cost money, and they are small touches that unexpectedly make donors feel genuinely valued. So I want you to think like handwritten thank you cards, quick personal emails, phone calls, or something else, which we can get into some creative ideas. So one of the most powerful things you can do is remember personal details, maybe where they heard about your charity, the reason they gave, when you first met them, or even their pet's name if it came up in the past conversation. It shows that you see them as a person and not just a donation. And the goal is to make them feel the way they did when they first donated. hopeful, appreciated, and part of something really meaningful. These little moments build loyalty and trust and often lead to increased giving, not just because they're asked, but because they feel connected. I am going to tell the story about the peanut butter Kit Kat chunkies that are on the screen. So I was delivering a session quite similar to this with my friend Andy, and it was one of the first times we'd ever really met face to face. And I was just whinging about the fact that I couldn't get hold of my favorite chocolate bar, which is a Kit Kat peanut butter chunky, which is such a top tier snack. Anyway, so I had been moaning about this like briefly during our meeting, and about 4 days later, I get a letter on my desk at work, and it's got not one, but two Kit Kat chunkies in it. And I was just absolutely thrilled. I thought it was such a lovely touch. And it really deepened our relationship. We're still good friends now. We still stay in touch and talk about fundraising all the time. And it's just one of those moments that really it turned us from being sort of like acquaintancey colleagues to like actual friends. So I always have to share that story. And if anyone wants to send me a Kit Kat chunky, I will happily accept one. So we're now going to talk about, we're now going to move on to another task. So it's just going to be 2 minutes. And I want you to think about how you might surprise or delight your donors during Small Charity Week, during your campaign, before or after. And I want you to think about things that will make your donors feel happy. Is there anything that you specifically can do at your organization that might just be a little bit more personal? Do you have like, if you're an animal charity, do you have like animals that you could take pictures of and send them to the donors in like a WhatsApp chat? Like, is there something that you can do? So I would like for you to take 2 minutes to just think about what that might be for your charity. And I would love for you to share some of the ideas in the chat. So we've got someone in the chat already who said that they could ask the children they support to draw pictures or thank you cards. That is a fantastic idea. I love that. So photos sent to a donor of supported families. Yes, a video message. Absolutely. I'm loving seeing these come in. It's fantastic. Yeah, personalized video messages. They are fantastic, and it's so much easier to do it now in the world of Zoom and the world of digital phones and stuff. It's much easier. We used to do at the British Youth Council, we used to get young people to hold up like a thank you sign, and then we would send that to everybody. Yeah, so I do mean as a response to donations, as like how will you thank them? How will you make donors feel amazing about giving to your campaign? Oh, with a donut from an independent donut place right next door. I love that. I need to know which charity this is so I can donate and get a donut. Amazing. Link to change. Noted. Thank you so much. Okay, it's been fantastic to read some of your delighters, but I will have to carry on, unfortunately. But we can always come back if you've got questions about other things. So far today, we've covered some objective setting, we've covered setting up your campaign timeline, we've talked about building some campaign assets, donor-centered communications, mapping your network, and donor love. So my hope is that you're feeling a little bit more prepared for your Big Give Appeal during Small Charity Week, and that you're ready to have a fantastic fundraising campaign. Now, before we get to the Q&A, I've got a couple of slides to show you. So NCVO, we're here to help. Our website is a wealth of help and guidance and practical support tools for you to use in your fundraising efforts. And we are running a webinar. I don't know if any of you know, but there's been an announcement that the Code of Fundraising Practice has changed or is going to be changing. And on the 22nd of May, we are hosting a free webinar to talk you through how to get through that. And then we are also, during Small Charity Week, we're running a top tips for creating an effective fundraising strategy webinar. So please do use the QR codes on the screen to sign up for those. I think you'll be sent these slides as well afterwards, so you'll be able to see. And then I cannot talk about NCVO without talking about the fact that we are a membership organisation, and we are running a we are running a membership offer during Small Charity Week. So if your organisation is under £30,000 annual income, it's actually free to join NCVO. So please do join, because there are so many great tools and resources available to you. And if your organisation is between £30,000 and £500,000, then you can get a 50% off discount code if you join as members before the end of July. And the code is SCW50. And now I'm happy to take us to questions. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can see you all again.
Thank you, Vicky. That was really great.
No problem.
Uh, yeah, if anyone has any questions, please do put them in the Q&A box, and we can start picking them up. But Vicky, just wanted to pick your brains about this. You've done big give campaigns before, and from starting from sort of very low donor base. How have you gone about sort of creating that database when you've had like one donor? What's been like your top tips there?
Honestly, it was so difficult. So it was it was at the British Youth Council, and they actually had worked with young people for like 70 years or something. And I just thought that I felt like there should have been like a database of like alumni that they had worked with, all these young people whose lives had been changed. But we just didn't have any way of capturing it. So the first thing I did was set up a free like CRM system. So a lot of CRM systems for charities, they have like a free element where if you get up to a certain number of records, then it's free to use. So I did that. And then I started with the one donor. I made sure I thanked him and made sure that I knew who he was and when he started giving, because that was really important. And then I I started to ask questions of like the people who had worked there for ages. I was like, who do you think would want to support us? And I was like reaching out to the trustees. And one of the really interesting things about the British Youth Council was that it was a trustee board of all young people. So they didn't have the traditional like, oh, we've all been on the board for 20 years, or we all know loads of people. Like it was a high turnover. Um,
Mm.
at the time, I used Donify, which I believe still does do. So I'm just answering a question,
Yeah.
which I believe does still do the free element up to a certain amount of records, and it's very user friendly. It has the option to integrate into your website, which was perfect for adding a donate button, which is something that we had to do. We had to add that to our website. And it was really about, I had loads of meetings. I was meeting with people constantly. I was asking questions, and I was sort of trying to grow the network from the people that I was meeting. So if I met one person, I was like, do you know like a couple of other people that were involved at the time that you were, that I might also be able to talk to? And it was a very slow and very organic process, but it meant that then I had a connection with every single donor. And I made sure to have really good practices. I was recording, like if they told me where they lived or if they told me what years they were involved, so that I could surprise and delight them later on with my knowledge.
And that is a common theme. Is we went to a workshop a few weeks ago, Beth and I, and there was another charity presenting sort of their sort of tips and advice to other charities, and their thing was, as what you just mentioned, is don't be afraid to ask. If you've met someone and asked, well, just have a soft ask. Do you know anyone else that would be interested in speaking with us? If you don't ask, you don't get. So yeah, the worst they could say is, sorry, I don't know, or I can't do that at the moment. You never know.
The number one reason that people give to charity is because they are asked. People very rarely do it off their own back. It is they have to be asked in some way first.
Yeah.
There's a couple of questions.
Yes.
This first one from Chloe says, how do you recommend asking other charities to support our campaign?
Other charities. So I guess it depends if they're competitors or not, but if they're like affiliated with you in some way, then you can share the toolkit that we talked about and ask them like, would it be possible to share this on your social media, or would it be possible for you to send this out in your mailings, like that sort of thing. I think that just have the conversation with them and just see if they'd be open to it is the best advice I can give there.
And we have a question for you, and Beth, I think you can chime in on this as well, is how many communications, so email, Facebook, etc., do you recommend? Have you found a gold nugget of volume?
So my answer to this is that the more communications you send, the more donations you get, but that's not always what everybody agrees with. I would say at least every day during the campaign, just to make sure that you're keeping that momentum going throughout. But you can see how it's performing for you, and you can take sort of an educated guess on whether or not you need to do more or less based on how the performance is going.
I probably agree with that. I think as well, you'll probably be a lot more active like on social media versus on emails. We normally do like a pre-launch, maybe like a week before to get our donors ready for the campaign coming up and get them to looking at the charities involved. Then we do one on launch day, and then we do one kind of like last chance a day before the campaign's due to end. But obviously you might have a few more emails in between that. If you've particularly reached your target kind of early on, you might have a different call to action in the middle of the week versus something else if you're trying to get those last minute donations in at the end. So I think just being responsive to what's going on during that week and having kind of comms prepared for each different scenario as well.
Great. And Lisa has asked, given the need to collect donations within a short period and through the Big Give campaign page, can you offer any advice how to avoid confusion for our donors, i.e. mistimed donations if we're promoting pre-campaign or donors coming to our website to donate? But the one thing I would say is that the donate button on your Big Give campaign page will only sort of be activated once the campaign started. So that will stop people donating before that matching period. On the donors coming to the website, to your own website to donate, one thing we've seen some charities do is that they've done a redirect during the campaign week. So their donate button on their website is actually then redirected to their Big Give campaign page to avoid missing those donations. So that is one piece of advice if you are able to do that.
Yeah, I completely agree. I will say that this does happen, but I think those are really good mitigating opportunities where you can edit the links to the donate buttons on your website, make sure that it's just the dates are really clear. So as I was saying earlier, donors do not read the whole of your email or the whole of your message. Like you have to have the specific information highlighted, and then they might go back and read it in more detail. So make sure that you say the dates of the campaign when it's live. And you could also do like a message that says, be one of the first, get in there at midday and make sure that yours is one of the first donations to happen during the campaign. Like you can use something like that to make it feel more time pressured, but that gets them in the right window.
Beth, do you have any questions?
There's another one here that says we're thinking of a type of refer a friend ask, as our database is rather unresponsive to fundraising. Have you any experience or thoughts about this?
So I think that's a really interesting one. It's good that you've identified that your database is like not responsive at the moment. Like that's fine. And I think it could be a way of just going back to those people and seeing what you could be doing differently. You could actually ask for feedback, and ask them, is there a reason? And sort of don't be afraid of finding out that information. There is also like, you could offer some sort of like donor thanks page on your website where you list out your regular donors, or you list out donors that you consider to be major. And when I say major, for any charity, that is a different definition. So some charities, that is anybody that's donated over £50. Like it is, like you can choose the term, and you can list them out, and that you can use that as an opportunity to say, we would love to list you on our website. Why don't you refer a friend, and we'll make sure that you're listed on there as one of our donors. Like people like that acknowledgement, and it's just one of the ways you could do it. It could also be that if you're ready to host an event, you could ask people to bring a friend or make sure that they're sharing the information to try and grow your database a bit.
Right.
Great. This is probably one for you, Sahil. If someone asks us a few weeks in advance if they want to donate, do we ask them to hold off, or can we accept donation and will it still count towards the match funding?
Yeah, absolutely. You will need to ask that person to hold off and wait until the campaign starts in June to donate. Yeah, we can't match any donations outside of the campaign period, so just bear that in mind. And have a quick question I can answer here. Do we have access to donor contacts via the Big Give account to send thank yous? Yes. Yeah, you will have access to all your you'll have access to a donor report through your campaign dashboard, and it'll have all the comms opt-in as well. So obviously you can only contact any donor that's opted in to receiving emails from you, but anyone that has, you can absolutely contact them with a follow-up and thank yous, and obviously with their stewardship plans. There are two great questions here. So firstly, from Jessica, she's asked, we find that the community just doesn't know enough about us, who we are and what we do. How can we really boost community engagement during Small Charity Week? We find local professionals know who we are, such as police and social workers, but other members of the community don't.
So I appreciate that's a really difficult situation to be in. I would say if you're a community-based organization, then you could look for community-based events to be at, to wear your information, like wear a sweatshirt or something there, and have some like handouts ready. Go and make the effort to have conversations with as many people as possible who are outside of the ones who ordinarily know who you are. You could ask the ones who are interested and know about you to also join in with that. So you've got quite a big group attending. And this doesn't have to always be an event. It could be just like the weekend in the high street, like making sure that you're sort of up and down the high street, making sure that people know who you are and what you're about. Like it doesn't have to cost you loads of money, and it doesn't have to be like you're hosting an event yourself. But there are ways to get the word out there in the community. And I believe that face-to-face is one of the best ways to do that.
Yeah, you could definitely ask those sort of community that you are connected to if they can share your campaign within their own networks. And yeah, you never know who they know as well, so definitely worth asking.
Definitely.
We have another question. We have a lot of comms planned over July as we hold a week of events. So I'm slightly concerned about donor fatigue, asking too much of our community. Is there any advice about how you mitigate this? Would it be complicated to ask? Would it complicate the ask to tie in with Big Give campaign with other promotions? Ask that we're asking from other people.
So I'm just going to ask you to leave that question on the screen because there's like multiple elements to
Yeah.
that. So I'd say the first thing is that we talked earlier about good donor-centered communications, and part of that is having really simple asks. So I would say that if you're sort of asking for multiple things, or there's multiple messages in one email, it will get confusing. People won't read it, and then you won't get the responses that you want. So I would say to try and make them as specific as possible, but have them in like bite-sized elements. Because I also understand that you probably don't want people to like unsubscribe from your email lists. Like I understand that too. So make sure that they just feel really relevant. Why are you asking? Why are you communicating with them? Make sure that the donor or the recipient understands why you're emailing, and then that will help sort of, they're less likely to unsubscribe from stuff where they really see why you're doing it, even if they can't actually get involved at that time. I would say that donor fatigue, whilst it is something to be aware of, if you're asking for a specific thing during a specific time frame, like match funding during the Big Give, that's a really compelling message. And I think people are more likely to jump on that than if you were to just be emailing every single week saying, please give us money for the same cause over and over again. Like, this is a really specific campaign, and I think making sure that they understand what the outcomes of the campaign are going to be and why it's now, why it's important, what the difference will be, that will really help with that process. Just want to make sure that I'm capturing all of that question. So I understand you've got a lot of comms planned over the summer, as you hold a week of events in July. Okay. So I would say that it's okay to have lots of communications going out as long as they feel relevant. I was gonna, before I read that there's an event plan or events planned in July, I would have said, is there any that can be moved later on or moved earlier so that there's less clash if that's something you're concerned about? But if that's not possible, then I would say just really make sure that it's specific and clear why you're emailing so that people aren't getting confused. But hopefully, if they love your organization and they know what the difference is going to be, then surely they'd love to donate.
Absolutely. Beth, do you have any questions?
There's one here from Ruth. Vicky, have you ever
Mhm.
done an in-person fundraising event to launch a digital campaign? Would you recommend this, or should we keep it fully digital?
That is a great question. So yes, I have done this. I don't necessarily know if I would recommend it, but I can tell you what we did, and you can decide if you think it might be right for you, because they're very different organizations across the board. So I did this at a very small charity called APHASIC, which is the Association for All Speech Impaired Children, and they had a very tiny office in London, and we did an open house like visit where we just pushed all the desks to that one side, and we invited as many donors as we could possibly fit into this office, and we had our CEO just talk about like why we needed support at that time and what the campaign was, because the audience that we spoke to, some of them did have like speech impairment, some of them had communication challenges. So we needed to make sure that there was like multiple ways we were talking about the campaign, which is why we chose to do something face to face as well as digital. And it was really successful. We actually had more people donating than we'd ever had before, but it was quite disruptive. And because we had such a small space, we couldn't afford to like host something. So like outside of the office space, we had to use what we had. So as I say, I can't say that I will recommend it, but the outcomes for us were good that one time that we did it. So you can sort of make a decision based on what you have available to you and whether or not you think that would be worth it.
And just to add to that, we have had lots of charities do in-person fundraising events, particularly around their big campaigns. They normally would have like QR posters, QR code posters, or like laptops or iPads, something available. So if any donor wants to donate directly to their campaign page, they can do that. Obviously, these were held whilst the campaign was live. If you're doing it before or after, then it wouldn't work for the Match Money campaign, but there's definitely ways to kind of incorporate the digital element into your in-person event.
Absolutely. There are a couple of more big give related questions, so I'll just whiz through them. When will the page go live so we can view it? You should all have access to your campaign pages now. If you don't have access to your campaign pages, it may be because you haven't uploaded your bank details yet, or they have not been approved. So if you can't access your campaign page, just get in touch with us and we can let you know the exact reason why you can't access it yet. Is there any way to track where donations are coming from? Unfortunately, we don't have tracking links permissible, so we can't give you like sort of that Google Analytics. If you want to do that, what we do recommend is maybe setting up a landing page on your own website, which then redirects to your Big Give campaign page, and then installing those tracking links on that page. It won't give you exact conversion data, but it'll give you some idea of how your sort of digital campaigns are performing.
I would just say to that as well, that's more particularly if you're using something like paid social media ads or anything like that. Like those are like the tracking links and pixels we can't do. But if you are using lots of different forms of channels to promote your campaign, like email, socials, etc., you can create little short links. You can easily do that, I think, for free on like Bitly and other sites like that on Google. And you can create like a unique UTM code, which means that you can track all of the clicks, of people who have like engaged with that post. So you can kind of then see what social media posts or what emails had the most engagement. And so that's one way of doing some tracking.
Yeah. Can we have a donate button to our charity website that links to the Big Give campaign page? Unfortunately, we don't have that type of integration. So you would, if you want to do something like that, you'd have to set up your own button on your own website and then have that link to the Big Give campaign page. We don't currently have functionality to have an integration on third-party websites. And with cash donations, there's a question here from Nicola. Can I just check as well with cash donations? I remember on another Zoom, if people don't have access to giving online, a third party not connected to the charity, you can pay this in. Yes, if you're having like a bake sale or you've collected some cash donations, yeah, a third party can sort of collect those funds and then pay them to your campaign page using their sort of own personal card or organization card. It just can't be the charity paying to their own campaign. And there's a question here from Sarah. This campaign is linked with global, make some noise. Are we able to contact our local heart radio to promote our regional involvement in the campaign? We don't have a representative from Global today, but we do suggest coming to the marketing webinar on Wednesday, which is delivered by Global, and you can ask that question and they can give you any advice there. So that would be the best time to ask that, or to ask us anything webinar on Friday where Global will also be present. And yes, the webinar is being recorded. We will be sharing it on our YouTube channel. And here's a question for both of you. Should we tell people about the campaign before or wait until the week of the campaign?
Definitely before. Definitely before. I think if you missed some of the slides earlier on, we did some about the campaign timeline, which are just like identifying what you need to get in place beforehand, how many weeks in advance you need to have things done. But I would definitely start talking about it and have maybe a bit of a countdown on like your website or your social media, like something really exciting that donors can be like, okay, it's 2 days to go, like make sure they're ready. So yes, I would say definitely start talking about it before to get the interest and the engagement up.
Great. And Beth, I don't know if you've seen any further questions may have missed.
Not that I can see, but I would just say obviously we are, as Sahil mentioned, having 2 more webinars this week. One about marketing, which will go in a bit more detail about some of the channels and methods that you can use to really maximize the campaign. But then particularly if you have questions around the process or kind of Big Give related platform questions, I would definitely encourage you to join the Ask Us Anything webinar, because that's just going to be your opportunity to ask us as many questions as possible, and we'll go over all of like the campaign details again. So definitely join us for those 2 webinars later this week if you are available. But again, they will be recorded just in case you do miss them.
Nicola's just put in the chat, she had one further question. I'm just scrolling up. I think this may tie in with your one of the answers that you gave before, Vicky, but feel free to sort of go over that again. Is should we be arranging to do something as in a walk or fundraising event in the campaign week, as well as sharing our giving page to our networks we've just mapped out?
Yeah, I mean, it sort of depends on you and your capacity and what you've got available in terms of volunteers and that sort of thing, like what you think will be beneficial to your organization. And if a walk or an in-person event or something like that would help you, then yes, absolutely do it. But also, if that's something that's not available to you, or if that's something that just feels a little bit too much, like that's okay as well. Like stick with a really robust plan of what emails and communications you want to send out. So whilst I'm not opposed to it, it's also, I don't think it's 100% necessary if you've got other options as well.
Absolutely. And just a reminder, all of our campaigns are digital fundraising campaigns. So events can definitely supplement that, but there is that definite element of like sort of building those digital fundraising skills as well, if you can, through the campaign. But yeah, I think those are all the questions. And I just want to firstly say thank you to Vicky for giving up time in a day to join us and share all of her wisdom and advice with all of us today. I mean, it's been a really great webinar, lots of tips and advice for charities to go away with and sort of hopefully put into practice in the next few weeks. So thank you, Vicky, for joining us today.
You're so welcome. Thank you so much. I hope that it's been really helpful for everyone.
Definitely has. And I want to thank all of the attendees for joining us today, for interacting with us and sort of sharing their ideas and also asking us so many questions. That's really great to see. Just ask us as many questions as you want. We're here to help. But hope everyone's taken something away from this webinar and look forward to all of you joining us on Wednesday. So hope you all have a rest of the good day. Bye.
Thank you.